This is Thursday, November the 7th, 2013. It's a wonderful day to be here at Texas Southern, and we say here, how are we doing here at Texas Southern? We're doing tigerific. So thank you those of you who are here right now. We will try to begin in about 1 minute. Our dean is here. He's hoping that we have a welcome from our provost also, but in the interim, in the liking to be on time, I'd like to introduce our dean, Dr. Bullard, and you'll hear from him more today, so I wouldn't give you his illustrious past, his events, and all the things we're doing. But I can say one thing for sure though, this particular day, Invisible Houston Revisited, is something that came out from when he first showed me his book, Invisible Houston, the Revisited. This seemed to be a natural movement, and he saw it. And he said, let's revisit this, and that's why we try to reach out to a broad spectrum of not just Houston, but of Harris County, and hopefully we can start some new conversations on how we really transform what we have. Houston be really a great city. Dr. Bullard, are you ready? Here. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm really pleased to be here this morning to greet you and to give you welcome. My name is Robert Bullard, and I'm the Dean of the Barbara Jordan Mickey Leland School of Public Affairs here at Texas Southern University. And welcome for all of our visitors to the university and to many of our colleagues and friends. Our provost will be here shortly to give you the official welcome from the university. However, in the meantime, I want to give you an overview of why Invisible Houston needs to be revisited. I left Houston in 1987 when the book came out. The book came out actually on October 1, 1987, so it's sort of a 25-year anniversary, 1 month delayed. Houston, as you all know, is the fourth largest city in the country. Houston is unique in a number of ways, and it is number one in a lot of the areas and has no problem with bragging about that. However, there's a part of Houston that when I wrote the book in 1987, and it was based on an 80 census, that was very invisible then. And even today, even though Houston has changed a lot demographically from 1987 or using 1980 data, there's still some components of Houston that are still invisible, that need to be made visible so that we can have corrective action. We can have action that goes to the heart of reducing and eliminating the inequalities that exist, that have been so persistent throughout these years. So, Invisible Houston Revisited, our summit, this is not a mass conference. This is a thinking, working, doing meeting. And we have a select group of individuals who come from select organizations and institutions and groups who are about the business of doing business, of getting the work done. And so we are here today to put a charge in front of all of us. And as you should know that we will be live streaming at 8:30. Are we?
Yes.
Now?
You're actually live right now.
Oh, okay. All right. I am a live person. And that we want the world to know and to see that there's some serious issues in Houston that we want to address, and we want to address them in a frontal way. We want to get out front of them and say, okay, these are things that we want to address, whether it deals with housing inequality, fair housing, foreclosure areas, entire neighborhoods have a rash of foreclosures, looking at the issue of environmental justice, sustainability issues. We want to talk about just sustainability. You just can't have sustainability. We need sustainability where the key and the heart deals with justice. And so whether we deal with housing, transportation, energy, access to parks and green space, whether we deal with heat islands, whether we deal with the issue of food security, whether we deal with all these issues, education, equity, justice have to be the lens through which we see these things if we are going to address these issues in a holistic way. So when we talk about the issue and the topics and the theme, the summit theme, it says, the theme of the Invisible Houston Summit focuses on coming to grips with how inequality in all of its multidimensional complexity is produced in contemporary Houston. Using an equity lens, we seek to shed light on a number of questions. And the first question, is there an invisible Houston today? And some would say we shouldn't take a whole day to figure that out. But we're going to look at it systematically. And being a researcher and being a scientist, we want to get the facts. And we want to show documentation. And we all know that having the facts has never been enough. And so this is a research policy summit, but it also has a community action component. That as we go through the day, and at the end of the day, we would hope that we would have an action plan of producing some collaborations, some partnerships, some coalitions, some work groups that could, in a way, come out of this in much more, I guess, comprehensive and action-oriented way, that we get to know each other, learn about each other's work, and to say, this is something we can work together on. We have 5 universities presenting at this meeting. We have a civil rights organization, the Houston Urban League. We have environmental organizations, community-based, work on these issues. We have individuals from city government presenting on housing. So when we talk about these issues, we have to talk about it from a cross-disciplinary framework. We ask the question, what is the state of inequality in Houston? Racial, class, gender. To what extent has Houston closed the gap when it comes to a lot of these areas? To what extent has that gap widened? How has the access to opportunity trended over the last 30 years? Access to opportunity. If we look at our transportation system, public transit, many of our residents don't have cars. And in order to get to some of our jobs, you must have an automobile. And so to what extent are our investments in infrastructure closing that gap? To what extent are there equity analysis done to show how tax dollars, federal, state, local, are used to address legacy issues of inequality? And to what extent have that pattern expanded inequality? What are the benefits and costs, and how are they distributed as Houston becomes a much more sustainable and greener city? Does sustainability and does a greener city equate with a fairer city? So looking at the issue of what happens when certain neighborhoods become walkable, greener, with the price of housing increasing, what does that do to incumbent residents in terms of potential for displacement and gentrification? How are we addressing those issues as the city changes? How are we addressing issues of poverty, and not only just urban poverty, but suburban poverty? The relationship between the city and its suburbs, and the relationship of governance. What are the major policy changes? Since this is a policy summit, What are the major policy changes that are needed to address current and emerging challenges facing Houston, and particularly as it relates to the issue of this city being one of the most racially diverse cities in the country, to borrow, not steal, a term from Professor Kleinberg. What does that diversity, how does that diversity translate into to equity, mobility, upward mobility, economic mobility? How, to what extent, and again, looking at these emerging challenges, to what extent is Houston ready for one of the most important environmental justice challenges of our time, climate change? To what extent is this city ready to address issues related to climate change? We are on the front line. And so when we talk about the issues of disaster response and emergency response, and we talk about adaptation and mitigation, we talk about addressing issues of social vulnerability. Which communities are more vulnerable? How do we develop community resilience models to make sure that no community is left behind, or on rooftops, or on the side of the road? So this summit really has some big shoes. There are a lot of issues, but I think we have enough brain power and people power in this city and in this state to really focus, laser focus on these issues, with the concept and the model being solution driven and outcome driven. We have some great universities in this city, in this region, in this state, and I think working collaboratively, I think we can really hone in on the issues and come up with some models and strategies to deal with some of these challenges. And so I see problems, I see challenges, but I also see opportunities. This is a great opportunity to work together, for a TSU to go across Scott Street and work with U of H, to go down Main Street and, is it Main? And work with Bryce. And to go up 280 to A&M, I maybe get my highways wrong, and to go down what highway to get to Austin. The idea is that we, because of the issues that we're dealing with, are very cross-disciplinary. And because the fact that the challenges call for holistic strategies to get to the solution, we need sociology, biology, toxicology, epidemiology. We need GIS. I mean, we need all these areas to hone in. And I'm biased. I think the sociologists do it better all the time. But again, you know, being an environmental justice person that's worked on this stuff for many years, I work with a lot of people. And I find it very refreshing to work with folks who are saying, well, we're going to leave our disciplines at the door. We're going to learn new languages, and the language is going to be about justice, fairness, and equity. No matter what no matter what the issue is, justice, fairness, and equity, that's the glue that brings us all together. That's what this summit is all about. And the fact that when I first came back to Houston, and I had not picked up I had not picked up Invisible Houston for many years. And I had gotten a number of people wanting me to say, well, now that you're back in Houston, are you going to update Invisible Houston? And my response was no. But I kept getting people wanting to say, are you going to do it? And I said, well, maybe I should try to look at this, but look at it from a different perspective. Instead of me just saying, I want to update dumping Invisible Houston, why not we put together a team of individuals that can think about these issues, brainstorm about these issues, do the research on these issues, and come together and do a summit and then develop the chapters for a book. So this is a summit, it's a book project, and then there's an action plan project of working on these issues on the ground. Because people know me, I've written 18 books, but it's just one book. Don't tell anybody. The book is Equity, Fairness, and Justice. Equity, Fairness, and Justice. And so the idea is to position our school, the Barbara Jordan McAleen School of Public Affairs, and we're a policy school, to work on policy issues with others who are like-minded and who want to do this work. And I think if we look at that from that perspective, I think we will take this summit and the deliverables and the products out of this meeting to another level. And I have to really thank the sponsors or people who assisted in getting us funds to do this kind of work. The university was very supportive of this project and initiative. We have some funds that we use to support this work from the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, the Houston Endowment, and the U.S. Climate Action Network to deal with these issues, cutting across the different frameworks. So the long and short of it is that today we hope to move forward. We know that there's nothing new under the sun. We know that there's a lot of work going on in this city already, have been going on for many years. We are talking about building on what exists and building out. Building on and building out, so that we're not talking about reinventing the wheel, but we're talking about building something that is lasting and that is inclusive. That is inclusive. So housekeeping, and I've done this already. We turn our cell phones off, or put them. No, well, you can put them on silent or vibrate mode. Oh, he's. Oh, okay. I just given the sign that my provost is here. Provost Sonny are here to give us the official welcome from Texas Southern University. Provost.
Good morning. Good morning. I must say I'm lucky to have come in a few minutes late to listen to Dean Bullard. I didn't give you a preamble of what you are supposed to do for the rest of the day. And I must confess, as I sat down there listening, I said, wow, look at the audience. Look at the quality of the audience. Look at the individuals that are in the room. And being an educator and an academician, I kind of thought, I said, okay, they're going to have all these questions they have to answer. What is going to lead to? Who's going to listen to them? But I was kind of happy when I had in between the lines that it will lead to publications, it will lead to a book, or books, as the case may be. But the issues that you are about to address are really, really very important. I would even say not just for the city of Houston, but for the entire world. Because a number of the things you'll be talking about don't just reside in Houston. They reside in the rest of the state of Texas, in this country, the United States of America, and the rest of the world. So I really admire and I feel jealous that my current position will not allow me stay through the conference, put on the hat of an academician, and ask the questions I should ask. But I trust that when the book comes out, as I read it, I can imagine the audience. I said, welcome to Texas Southern University this morning. I will imagine you as an audience, and I will look forward to really hoping to not just the book, but hoping that whatever outcomes of this conference will be such that you have ears listening to you, not just in the city of Houston, the state of Texas, the country as a whole, but the world will be listening to the kind of things you will come up with. The issues are here. He's talked about 30 years ago, 30 years after. What happens? Are those issues gone? No. Are they getting any better, in my opinion? No. Will it get worse in future if we don't start doing something about it? Yes. So that's why you're here, and I'm truly glad to welcome you all. And I'm jealous again, as I've said, but I hope to read the outcomes of whatever you've done today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are now ready to bring up our first panel, and our first panel deals with race and class inequality trends. So would the panelists come to the podium for the first panel? Dr. Kleinberg. Okay.
Oh, you don't have them. You put them all at the same time?
Huh?
Is that how you do it? Okay, fine.
Who many of you know, who is a national expert dealing with Houston and the Houston area survey. He's a sociologist at Rice, and he's the co-director of the Kinder Institute at Urban Research Institute for Urban Research at Rice University. Professor Kleinberg.
Audience, here's how the approach we will be using. The presenters will present first here, and once they've presented, then the first presenter will populate the stage, then the second presenter will present, then they'll get to the stage, and so forth. So the presenters will be sitting up there being looked upon by themselves. So if we can get Dr. Kleinberg here, we'll get him ready. Okay. It has to be warm.
Come to grips with this, the African American community in this biracial world that was Houston throughout all of its history, and now undergoing just remarkable transformations. So I want to just remind us of those changes and then report to you on what we think we've learned from now 32 years of systematic surveys with the representative random sample of Harris County residents in February of each of the years, asking people, how do you see the world, and watching the world change, and a particular focus on the African American community. Two critical new realities, right? Number one is, this was the economy in the 30 years after World War II, when the rising tide lifted all boats. When the poorest 20% of Americans more than doubled their incomes, the richest 5% doubled theirs in what was a kind of broad-based economic prosperity, and African Americans benefited from that in the development of an America that emerged out of World War II, the sole economic power on the planet, and we were booming in a broad-based way. As I say, the poorest 20% more than doubled their incomes in the 30 years after World War II. Here was the last 30 years, when virtually all the benefits of economic growth have gone to the richest 5%, most of that to the richest 1%, and a striking redistribution of earnings out of the hands of the poor and the middle class into the hands of the rich and the super rich in a way that we've never seen before in American history, with a possible exception of 1928. What happened was globalization, not the decline of the West, but the rise of the rest. If you're doing a job in America that I can train a third world worker to do, and I pay that third world worker $10 a day to do that job, I'm not going to pay you $10 an hour. And if you are doing a job that I can program a computer to do, I'm going to replace that job with an intelligent machine. Suddenly, education has become critical to a person's ability to earn enough money to support a family. It is the central political challenge of our times. How do we restore the equalizing institutions that used to ensure that all Americans could share in the prosperity of the country? And more now, the only way to improve the lot of the poor is not by accelerating economic growth, it's not by cutting taxes on the rich. The only way to improve the lot of the poor is to invest in their skills. And you can see in the last 30 years, the poorest 20% of American families have actually lost ground, are making less money today than they did 30 years ago, and the bottom 60% of American families have basically stagnated in the last 30 years. It's the central political challenge of our times, and obviously African Americans are dealing with this reality with the growing inequalities predicated above all else on quality education. The other critical piece is this remarkable demographic revolution. The story of Houston is that during the oil boom years of the 60s and 70s, we were booming, and it was Anglos pouring into the city. This is where the jobs were during the oil boom years, and by 1980, here is the last those 3 decades of the oil boom years. You can see the Anglo population zooming. We were a biracial southern city throughout all of our history. In 1960, Harris County had 1.2 million people living here. 74% of us were Anglos, 20% African Americans, just 6% Hispanics, less than 0.5% were Asians. During the oil boom years, Anglos were pouring into Houston, and by 1980, Houston became the 4th largest city in America, still an overwhelmingly Anglo city, 63% Anglo, 20% African American, 16% Hispanic, 2% Asian. The Anglo population was soaring during the oil boom years. After 1982, the Anglo population of Harris County stopped growing. And all the growth of this, the most rapidly growing city in America, has been brought about by the influx of African Americans, Latinos, and Asians, and this biracial southern city, dominated and controlled throughout all of our history by white men, has become the single most ethnically diverse metropolitan region in the country. Here is the last 30 years, and you can see what's happened, right? The Anglo population has actually dropped. There are fewer Anglos in Harris County today than there were 10 years ago or 20 years ago. The African American population, fueled by middle-class African Americans moving back from the northern cities into southern cities, Atlanta first, Houston second, fueled by African immigration, has grown at about 20% per decade, keeping pace with the overall population of the county as a whole, and then soaring populations of Latinos and Asians. And by 2010, Harris County is now 41% Latino, 33% Anglo, 18% African American, 8% Asian. A radical new world, a world now of all of us now minorities, all of us called on to build something new under the sun, a truly successful, inclusive, equitable, multi-ethnic society that is Houston and Texas and America in the 21st century. We are at the forefront of where all of America is going to be, all of us minorities. The reason why we can claim that Houston is the most ethnically diverse of all the major cities in America is that we have the most even distribution among the 4 great communities of this country than any other multi-ethnic melting pot city. There are very few Asians in Miami. There are very few Hispanics in San Francisco. There are very few African Americans in Los Angeles. This is where the 4 communities meet. In greater balance, greater equality, all of us minorities. How do we build the new America of the 21st century? And it's not just numbers, it's also ages. Here is babies on the left and old folks on the right. This is the census of 2010. And here, much to my chagrin, is where all the Anglos are. It's only among people over the age of 60 in Harris County, Texas today that a majority of folks are Anglos. Young people are disproportionately non-Anglo. It's happening all around America, nowhere more clearly seen than in Houston. Here is where everyone else is. And so the reality today is that of everybody under the age of 20 in Harris County, Texas, not just HISD, but all of Harris County, of everybody under the age of 20, 51% are Latinos, 19% are African Americans, 10% are Asians, fewer than 23% are Anglos. 2 critical realities there, right? Number one, No force in the world is going to stop Houston or Texas or America from becoming more African American, more Latino, more Asian, and less Anglo as the 21st century unfolds. Nothing in the world can stop that. I tell people, okay, build your fence, close the borders, not another immigrant ever again is going to come to these shores. 60-year-old Anglos are not going to be making a whole lot more babies. We'll do the best we can. We'll work on it every chance we can. You can go to the bank on this, right? This is the America of the 21st century. And then the other critical point is that if Houston's African American and Latino young people are unprepared to succeed in the knowledge economy of the 21st century, it is hard to envision a prosperous future for Houston. That is who we are and will be as the 21st century unfolds. And it's what makes this revisiting of the invisible Houston and the sense of where we are today of particular importance as we think about what are the resources we have to build this new Houston of the 21st century. And I want to touch just very quickly on a few of our key findings from these 32 years of where we've interviewed just about 10,000 African Americans over these years, and a really rich picture, we think, of that community and how we're dealing and addressing these issues. One is looking at Anglos, blacks and Latinos in terms of levels of education. Everyone is getting more education now in this critical new reality, but the gap is even greater today than it was in the early years between African Americans and Anglos. So everyone is doing better, but closing that gap is still far into the future. And then here very quickly is educational attainment. Of course, this is less than high school degree, some college degree, postgraduate education. Anglos, of course, are much higher levels of education. Blacks and U.S.-born Latinos about the same. Blacks more education than U.S.-born Latinos, but in annual household income, blacks are have lower incomes than Latinos. Why? Because of marriage. African Americans still today, the missing of African American males is a phenomenon across the country, also in Houston. So blacks are less likely to be married, less likely to have more than one income in a family, and more likely to have to deal with very serious poverty issues. And then two big themes I want to touch on quickly in my 15 minutes that I'm already running short of. Number one, there's a series of questions that have to do with what we sometimes call motivated beliefs. If you're poor, a question that says, for example, do you think most people in America today, most of the poor people in America today are poor because they don't work hard enough or because of circumstances they can't control? If you're poor across the board, you're likely to say circumstances you can't control. And if you're wealthy, you're motivated to believe anyone can make it, and if you're not making it, it's because you're not working hard enough. That pattern is absolutely unmistakable among Anglos. It is almost unmistakable among Latinos. It doesn't exist among African Americans. And I want to just show you a series of this. This is African American. This is less than high school degree, some college degree. Are you in favor or opposed to federal health insurance to cover the medical costs of all Americans? It doesn't change among African Americans. It drops significantly as you get more education. You're less likely to say, I want health insurance for everyone. And here it is again. This is African Americans on the question: is government trying to do too many things that should be left to individuals or businesses, or should government do more to try to solve the problems facing Americans? Wealthy, successful, highly educated African Americans are no different from poor African Americans in their belief that government needs to act to solve these problems, dropping in each of the other two communities. Here's one more of these. This is government has a responsibility to help reduce the inequalities between rich and poor in America. No change again among African Americans. Significant drop-offs among Latinos and Asians. The sense of peoplehood, that feeling no matter how well I'm doing in my own life, there but for the grace of God go I. We are a collective community still struggling with inequalities and discrimination, and that recognition that we're all in the same boat is a powerful reality and a powerful source of strength, I think, in the African American community that is not found among Anglos and Hispanics. When you get wealthy and you feel no identification and no connection with poor whites or poor Latinos, African Americans do in a really quite important, I think, and significant way. And then that ties into Republican or Democrat, right? Anglos become Republicans as soon as they're making over $50,000 a year. Latinos become Republicans, and they're making about 50,000 a year. African Americans never become Republicans. So it has a lot to do with the central reality of the political process, which is, or the political divisions. Key difference between Republicans and Democrats is what is the role of government, and how do we achieve economic justice? Do we trust the free enterprise system to do it all right, or is there a need for government intervention? And so it's a powerful and interesting phenomenon. Just a quick political thing. Mitt Romney won 60% of the white vote across all of America. That would have elected him president 8 years ago. He lost 71% of the Latino vote, 73% of the Asian vote, 94% of the African American vote. And the new reality, and that's what is going to make Texas one of the battleground states as we go forward, but a big part of that has to do with what is the role of government. And Anglos have a different understanding of the world than African Americans, Latinos, or Asians. You can see that in these patterns. So that's theme number one. That is, I think, very interesting and relevant. We need to think more about how do we take advantage of this remarkable sense of peoplehood that is there among the African American community. The other key difference has to do with younger versus older African Americans, and just in general, big differences. The world looks and feels like a different place if you've got black skin than if you've got white skin, if you're African, if you're Latino or Asian. And just a few quick examples. We've asked over all these years, do blacks and other minorities have the same opportunities as whites in the U.S. today? Of course that's true. Say 64% of Anglos. No, that's not true. Say 69% of African Americans. Blacks in the U.S. are still a long way from having the same chance in life that white Americans have. You better believe it. Say 68% of African Americans. Nonsense. Say 66% of Anglos. In general, is the criminal justice system biased against blacks? Does it give blacks fair treatment? Does the criminal justice system give biased against blacks, biased in favor of blacks, or does it give blacks fair treatment? 67% of African Americans say it's biased against blacks. 71% of Anglos say it gives blacks fair treatment. And then maybe the most striking of all, in our module about Katrina back in 2006, we said, as you may know, most of the victims of the Katrina hurricane were African Americans if instead they had been white Americans. Do you think the government would have responded more quickly, less quickly? Would that not have made any difference? 72% of African Americans say that government would have responded more quickly. 78% of Anglos say it would have made no difference. Just striking contrast in what the world contains, in how people see and understand the world. And part of what my claim is that we've got there's a wonderful line from Alfred North Whitehead who said, every way of seeing is always a way of not seeing. Every perspective contains a blindness. And it's only by interacting with people who see the world differently than we do that we can see more fully what the world contains. One of the great challenges in Houston is that we don't interact with each other nearly as much as we need to as we work together to build this new multi-ethnic world. But the other interesting thing is that younger African Americans see things slightly differently from older. And here's just a few examples of this. Is one of our fun questions. We said, have you ever been involved in a romantic relationship with someone who was not African American? And the percent who said, yes, I have. Thank you very much for asking, was 62% among younger African Americans under the age of 30, 46, 47, and then dropping off 33, 31, 13, right? A reminder that us older folks grew up in a different world. The world of the 60s and 70s was a different reality than the world of the 1990s and 2000s when younger African Americans are coming of age. And here's a set of questions. This is 4 different age groups. Blacks and other minorities have the same opportunities as whites in the U.S. today. The percent who believe that is 37% among the younger African Americans, dropping to 27% among the older folks. This is the other question. Blacks are still a long way from having the same chance in life as white Americans. The criminal justice system is biased against blacks or in favor of blacks. Discrimination against ethnic minorities is no longer a serious problem in America. A reminder that older African Americans grew up in a world where discrimination was palpable, where the barriers to achievement were just potent and real and present and constant. Younger African Americans are growing up in a world of multi-ethnic diversity. And that sense of being a part of a multi-ethnic world, of building connections and friendships and relationships and marriages. I tell people the greatest challenge for the future of Houston is not an ethnic divide or a racial divide. We are falling in love with each other, marrying, making multiracial babies, or it messes up all the sociologists want to put people into nice, clear categories, and it's we are coming to know each other, and universities are becoming more and more integrated, and the real problem for the future of America is not a racial divide, it's a class divide. And you can see it in all the different communities, growing bifurcation. There's a growing middle class among African Americans and a growing underclass. People's access to the education that is required in today's world to get any kind of job that will support a family is now the critical question for the Houston and the American future. And we're getting better on this. This here's a series of questions over the years. I just asked, how would you rate the ethnic relations in Houston in general? Excellent, good, fair, or poor. Here are Anglos, Anglos, Latinos, African Americans. Going up in all cases. African Americans have always been much less optimistic about ethnic relations in this city than Anglos, who think everything's hunky-dory in Houston. But in all three cases, growing, increasingly positive views of this new multi-ethnic world that is Houston and Texas and America as the 21st century unfolds. Thank you all very much. Look forward to discussions and questions. Thank you.
Dr. Frank, the dean has made an audible. We have all the presenters that stay to the seat, and when they're all finished, then we bring them all up. So they won't be have the lights in the eyes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kleinberg. The next speakers will be deal with black income and poverty, the Houston experience. We have Dr. Shanhu Ren and Dr. Jennifer Alexander will be co-presenting on this. Both of them are from the University of Texas at Austin.
To our study area. See, usually when people are talking about a city like Houston, we're talking about it has two geographic dimensions. When we're talking about Houston, we could talking about Houston as a city, the city of Houston, which is defined by administrative boundaries. Here we're not talking about Houston as a city. We're talking about Houston